doch die Einheit.
This card don't read so good. Wake up. Let's card the set. What the hell is this? Best in show. All right. What's up, my friends? Welcome to the complete set review. For Aetherdrift, start your engines, vroom, 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 family, etc., Mario Kart, so on and so forth. And we did white, we did blue, now we're doing black. Our complete set review, we go over every single card in the entire set, constructed and limited. Give out the awards you know and love, best in show, our trap card, our sleeper card, and our Bombin Common. And about to go over black. Of course, we got big things coming up here. 10 new brews happening on Wednesday. We get to play the cards for the first time on the early access event. That's going to be really, really fun. We got Bronze and Mythic coming up. I'm flying to the Pro Tour. Very, very busy month. Lots of things happening. Let's get started, all right? Before we start, like, comment, subscribe, support the content. I know it sounds silly, but if you like the show, a lot of work goes into these shows, and your support makes that possible. And your support can literally just be hitting the like button every time. It costs you nothing, and it helps me a ton. Let's go, folks, all right? Starting off with Ancient Vendetta. Cranial Extraction.
Pointless nostalgia.
Who remembers Cranial Extraction, right? 4-mana for a sorcery. Choose a card name and search target player's graveyard, hand, and library. Up to 4 cards of that name and exile them. That player shuffles. Now, a few things to note here. One, obviously it's up to 4. So, like, there's no, like, there's some weird corner case or whatever. You can't name a land and so on and so forth. That's one. The other one here is that this does not have the they draw a card if they have it in their hand clause, which is big. So, like, if you know they have Sunfall and you name Sunfall, you get the card out of their hand and out of their library. And that's where things get better, you know, where the problem with these sort of cranial extraction effects are often that they don't do anything in the game you're currently playing, right? So I cast a spell, I tap, I spend 4 mana and a card to make it so you can't draw a card in your deck. But you still have all your cards and all your mana available too. And unless that card is fundamentally important to your deck functioning, it doesn't matter that much, honestly. So the fact that you can get a card out of their hand is a pretty big deal, which is cool. This is a sideboard card, obviously. This is a pretty narrow card, but kind of a cool card to have access to, realistically. And again, it gets out of hand, which is kind of cool too. It's an uncommon, which is funny because like this was like a big deal. This was like the big chase rare of Kamigawa like a million years ago. It's Cranial Extraction, which was this card, but it was arcane. So kind of cool to see. It's this quiet uncommon of a set, but cool thing to have it constructed, unplayable, and limited. That's cool. Let's get back on track here, folks. All right, 5 mana for a sorcery. Zombify, creature or vehicle, make a pilot. Definitely not better than any of the other Zombifies in standard. In limited, there are some cool vehicles that have cycling, which is pretty sweet. So that's kind of like a cool little sub synergy. But 5 mana for a Zombify is a lot in limited. So feels like a pretty fringe limited card. Not really a constructed card, but oh my god, folks, I love Bloodghast. One of my favorite cards of all time. I'm pretty sure when I did my top 8 cards of all time article, Bloodghast is one of the 8. I love Bloodghast. That being said, I freaking hate the art of this card. You know what, folks? Hold on. All right, that's better. Bloodghast has like some of the sickest art in Magic. Like this might be a top 10 art of all time for me in Magic. So love it. All right. Perfection. There we go. One of the things I do for you fine folks, you know, the things I do.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bloodghast is awesome. This is a really powerful card. It is a somewhat, it's a kind of card that needs a deck. You know, it's a synergy card through and through. You need to be able to get in the graveyard. You don't want to cast it. You can't block. Those are all viable things. But if you have a way to constantly put cards into the bin, and bring them back, this card is awesome. Adorably, this card plays well in the set as a crew, which is like kind of like an unintended, you know, there were no vehicles when this card was printed the first time. And as a crew, this card's great, right? Because can't block anyway. So that's really cool. And then obviously insane with sacrifice synergies. So when it comes to sack synergies, graveyard synergies, this is the card you want. And I absolutely adore Bloodghast. I love this card. It certainly needs to have a home. This card, there needs to be the right cards around it, but when there are, Bloodghast is an absolute banger. Adore this card. So happy it's back. There will definitely be at least one Bloodghast that can 10 new brews. Probably more than that, honestly, because I love this card so much. So really, really happy, really, really excited, and good stuff. I'm pumped for Bloodghast in Standard. In Limited, this card's a little worse, I think. It's a little hard to cast a card that can't block in Limited. That being said, there is some mill stuff in Limited, some self-mill and some discard stuff. Basically, once you get this card into the bin and without casting it, you're golden. You never want to cast it, but if you can get it to play for free, it's incredible. Love Bloodghast. I'm just happy. Speaking of self-mill, we've got Carrion Cruiser. 3 mana for a 3/2 vehicle, EDB mill 2, then return a creature or vehicle card from the graveyard to your hand, and crew 1. This is a great limited card. Again, as I mentioned earlier about the vehicles, the crew costs go up exponentially or down in power level, where crew 1 is great, crew 2 is worse, crew 3 is bad, and any more than that's really bad. So crew 1 is great, the body is fine, this is just, a Gravedigger. The fact that it mills also for extra value is sweet too. Card's good. Just a good limited card. Constructed, probably not, but great limited card. Cool stuff. Chitin Gravestalker, 6 mana for a 5/4, has affinity for artifacts and or creature cards in your graveyard. Kind of weird in a set that actually has affinity in it to not just say affinity, but whatever. Also has cycling too. So this card's cool. There have been some graveyard decks in Standard playing this sort of card up to Beanstalk. And this is a cheaper version. Most of them cost 7 or 8. So that's kind of cool. Having cycling is kind of cool too, as is counting for artifacts as well. That being said, a 5/4 no keywords is probably not good enough for Constructed. This is like a really, really deep synergy deck with this. But good limited card. Again, for self-mill stuff, whatever, pretty cool. Yeah, it's cool. Cryptcaller Chariot, 5 mana for a 5/5 vehicle with menace. If you discard one or more cards, make that many tapped zombie tokens and crew 2. So I have some problems with this card, right? This is not quite a Seeker's Chariot. Okay? I knew a Seeker's Chariot. This ain't a Seeker's Chariot. The problem with this card is that vehicles already have the inherent problem of they don't do anything by themselves, right? If I'm mulligan to 5, my hand is 4 swamps in this card. I can't do anything. I've got nothing. I've got actual nothing. So vehicles have that problem. Then on top of that, this card also has the problem of its activated ability requires other stuff to happen too. I have to have ways to discard cards. If you can do that, cool. And it's kind of cute that the zombies can crew this, but they even come in tapped. So I think this card's pretty embarrassing, honestly. I think if the zombies that were created could crew it immediately, that would be a huge game. The fact that they can't is really tough. So for 4 mana, this card is just way below the bar for Constructed. For limited, this card's cool if you have ways to discard, sure. A 5/5 menace vehicle is like okay at this cost anyway. But yeah, otherwise, I think this card's pretty stinky. Just too many pitfalls in one card. Cursed Cloth Wrappings, 4 mana for an artifact. It's an anthem for all of your zombies. Creepy. And then tap to you have a creature card in your graveyard, Embalm until end of turn. The Embalm cost equals the mana cost. I feel like I'm okay with them having like these one-of old mechanics, like the legend in white has Exert. It's the only Exert card in the set. Embalm's a tough one though. Embalm's like a really, really wordy, weird mechanic. Whatever. So Embalm basically means that you pay the cost, you exile the card, and you get a token that's a copy of the card, but it's a white zombie. So more human than human, more human than... No? So allows you to recast your creatures, which is kind of cool. It's fine. I think 4 mana for an anthem is pretty bad. And then I think that 4 mana for a raised deity kind of effect is pretty bad too. So I think if 4 mana of his card's probably not there Constructed. It's a great limited card because just like the ability to recast spells over and over again is pretty cool too. But yeah, I think a little too clunky. Cool card, cool art. Deathless Pilot, 2 mana for a 2/2 zombie pilot. Saddles mounts and vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. So this is a 4 power pilot. And then has the ability 4 mana return graveyard to your hand. I think this card's pretty sweet for limited. It's the kind of card I don't think you necessarily want more than one of, but But I would imagine pretty much every black deck's going to want one of these. Good sacrifice stuff. Most importantly, I think a real important thing in this format, both in Constructed and in Limited, is going to be to make sure you've got pilots for your vehicles. You don't want to be in a spot where you just have like 6 lands and 2 vehicles in play and just nothing to do, you know? Like you're like, all right, I guess go, you know? So that's a real scary place to be. And this card is a great hedge against that, which is cool. So the power level here is not super high as far as like being a 2/2 for 2, but the effect is great. It's a great mana sink. I think this is going to be a pretty cool limited card. Not a super high pick or anything, but pretty good. Constructed, no. Demonic Junker. That's a pretty cool one, honestly. Affinity for Artifacts returns. Very powerful mechanic, obviously. This is a 7 mana 4/3 vehicle. ETB for each player destroy up to 1 creature. If you destroy your own creature, you may put 2 counters on this and crew 2. So I think this card is probably going to have a little more of an impact in older formats because, you know, Affinity, 7 mana for Affinity is a lot. It's kind of hard to get that much Affinity in play without artifact lands and other, like, you know, more busted things in older formats. That being said, this card's still really good. I think that if for some sort of artifact deck that can cast this, it would be pretty cool. Obviously, this is sort of like, you know, Leyline Binding-esque in a way. It's funny because, like, it works with Beanstalk, but, like, that's an enchantment, which is kind of tough. So the power level is there. Does it have the support? I don't really think so. But it's a cool card. Phenomenal limited card. Great commander card, right? You just kill all the player stuff, which is kind of cool too. Constructed, probably not quite, but it's a cool card. Engine Rat. Speaking of cool limited cards, 1 black for a 1/1 Death Touch is a stat line that I love in limited. I just love the early blocker. It's great. It also has the late game ability of 6 mana, drain for 2, or not drain for 2, just deal 2. If it was drain for 2, it'd be phenomenal, but still lose 2. So it's a mana sink. It blocks great early. It's good early. It's good late. This is my kind of draft card, you know? No synergy stuff here with like vehicles or artifacts or whatever, but just a good, honest to God, limited card that I think would be a good card in any set. If the black decks are slow, this card is great. And there's some additional value here also with the speed mechanic where, like, if I play a 2 or 3 mana card that starts your engines, I can attack this immediately. And they have to decide if they want to block it or not because you can go right up to 2 rats. So that's pretty cool too. So big fan of this card. Love it as a draft card. Constructed, no, but good stuff. Gas Guzzler. Vampires in this plane apparently eat gas. That's kind of gross. I don't know, but whatever. So 1 mana for a 2/1. It comes into play tapped. I think the important part about this card is that it starts your engines on turn 1. Very important to start your engines as early as possible because start your engines synergizes with literally anything that attacks or deals damage, right? So you're always trying to attack and deal damage. The sooner you can start your engines and get value off that damage is great. So that's pretty cool. And this card's interesting because you would assume this card, like, is, you know, max speed, return from a gravecrawler style, you know? It's not. It's max speed, 1 black, attack creature or vehicle, draw a card. That's like a really powerful effect. Sack a random Bloodghast, draw a card, whatever else it might be. That being said, gotta get to max speed, but there's a lot of like black aggressive cheap creatures that can do for stuff. Things like Fear of Lost Teeth, you can like sacrifice it and ping for 1, get your speed going. So this card's cool. I like this card a lot, honestly. I think it's a very unique card. We're used to seeing these sort of like, you know, 1 mana recursive can't block 1-drops. This is very different than that, even though it looks like that. I think it's pretty powerful. It's also a rogue, it's a vampire, to my matter also. Card's good. And if you're limited, this card's great. Cheap creature, start your engines, and of course, if you ever get max speed going, it's great as well. Yeah, card's gas. I like it a lot. Gastal Raider. We got 3 mana for a 2/1. Start your engines again. When it enters, target opponent reveals their hand, choose instant or sorcery card, they discard it, and then max speed, it's +1/+1 and menace. The problem with this card is that a lot of the more controlling decks in Standard rely on like a lot of enchantments and not just instant sorceries. There isn't really like a, you know, Memory Deluge, Wrath of God, like spell-based control deck in the format. Most control decks are based on enchantments. So I don't really know if this card has a home of like, you know, it's obviously a sideboard card, but like, what does this card want to get into? I'm not sure. The power level is reasonable enough. You know, it's Sing Collector with upside, which is cool. It's a vampire and a rogue, might be relevant for stuff. But I think overall, in current Standard, This doesn't really have that much of a home. So decent card, but not really great in the current metagame. For limited, this card's great, I think. If you ever nab a spell, this is awesome. I don't know. Maybe it's not great. I mean, I think it depends on your engines, I guess. Because there obviously are a lot of enchantments and artifacts in this set too, so you might just miss this card. But if it ever hits, it's really, really good. I don't know. I'm not sure at limited, but... Gonti, Night Minister. Gonti returns. I was a big Gonti fan back in the day. 4 mana for a 3/4. Whenever a player casts a spell they don't own, that player makes a treasure token. So your opponents as well, which is important to note. They cast, Seek the Beast, stuff like that. Whenever... I'm sorry, never mind. I misspoke. Not from exile, don't own. So, whatever. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller looks at the top card of that opponent's library, exiles it face down, and play that card for as long as it's exiled. Mana of any type can be passed anyway. So, this is a weird wording for commander or whatever. Basically, if your creature hits them, you get to exile top card of your library and play it. And that is forever, not tied to Gonti. That's a very powerful effect, right? Stealing cards is pretty great, but it does require you to be hitting with creatures. There's a few cards in Standard that already do that, Enduring Curiosity being the most exciting one, but also Gix. So there are plenty of cards that pay you off for like hitting your opponent creatures. And if you aren't hitting your opponent, this card's a stone blank. It's a vanilla 3/4 for 4, which is obviously terrible. So it can proc more than once. It's whenever 8 creatures combat damage to one of your opponents. So if you have 4 creatures attacking, you'll get 4 cards. But again, just play Enduring Curiosity, I guess, or Gix. So really, really fun card, but I don't think it's a particularly good card. Sorry. In limited, this card's awesome, though. Bomb in limited. You steal 1 card, you're stoked. You steal more than that, you're super happy. And you can play lands, too, which is kind of nice. So, cool. One of the many cards in the set that's Enduring Curiosity, but a lot worse. Next up is Grim Bauble. Is that a bobblehead on a dashboard? How did we get here? How did this happen? 1 mana for an artifact. ETB, -2/-2 until end of turn. And then 3 mana to sacrifice it and surveil 2. So this is obviously a sorcery speed artifact disfigure. If you're looking for disfigure and an artifact-based deck for synergy stuff, that's pretty cool. It obviously can be blinked by Enduring, Pixie, whatever it's called. Enduring Pixie, whatever it is. Picked up by Fear of Isolation, so on and so forth. So I think that this card definitely has a home, in constructed if the bounce decks want this kind of effect. I would say this card is probably better than Deadweight, but close. And then in limited, this card is just good. Good affinity and stuff as well, which is kind of cool. Being an artifact's a big deal. So it's good. Not great. -2/-2 is definitely not like the most exciting thing of all time, but certainly a playable card. It's cheap enough to see play in all formats. Pixie, this town, etc., etc. Grim Javelineer is next. 2 mana for a 3/2 human warrior common. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature gets +1/+0 on a turn, and when it dies, surveil 1. This card's like fine, honestly. As far as limited cards go, the 3/2 for 3 is like the standard limited stat line. Blocks well, or blocks fine. Attacks not great, but okay. But the value you get from this card's pretty cool. You just like play it on turn 3, attack with your 2-drop. If they trade, get some value. If they don't trade, get more damage. Then next turn, it can attack for 4. If they trade, get some value. If they don't, cool. So not like a great card. It's mostly filler. You get it late in your drafts, but I think this card's fine. I don't think this card's particularly bad or anything. Hellish Sideswipe. 1 black sorcery. Additional cost, sacrifice artifact or creature. Destroy target creature or vehicle. If a sacrifice permanent was a vehicle, draw a card. There aren't many vehicles I think you want to actively sacrifice. Sacking a Bloodghast is great. Sacrificing a vehicle is a little rougher. This can sack the disfigure and stuff, which is cool as well. But for the most part, this is just your typical 1 black sack a thing kill. We see this in every set. Good limited card. Constructed. I think there are better versions of this card, but nothing really new here. So, Hour of Victory. Hooray! Yay! 2 mana for an enchantment. Start your engines. When this enters, make a 2/2 zombie. Max speed. 2 mana, sack this Demonic Tutor. I guess it's pretty bad, right? So 3 mana for a 2/2 is way, way, way below the bar. And then max speed, Demonic Tutor, the problem is, what deck is going to be aggressive enough to be able to hit max speed and then also want Demonic Tutor as well. Yeah, it's not an effect that like an aggro deck really wants that much. It is 2 pieces of cardboard. It is an enchantment. There's some things happening here, but the rate I think of this card is just too bad. So for limited, sure. I think that the 2/2 is probably just good enough, and then tutoring up your bomb is pretty cool. But for constructed, not really super exciting. Next up is Intimidation Tactics, 1 black sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose an artifact or creature card from it, and you get to exile that card. Has cycling 3. This card's pretty good. 1 mana, hit a creature, exile it is fine. Adding artifact to that equation is pretty good. And then adding cycling to that equation is also pretty good. So this seems like a pretty reasonable sideboard card, honestly. And maybe even main deckable. I think that they were pretty careful with this card. I think if this card was cycling 2, we'd be looking really, really nice here. But cycling 3 is certainly still a buyout. Dreams of Steel and Oil is still legal. That's very similar, right? But also hits graveyards too. Yeah, I guess like that's fair. If you like, whenever you're sideboarding a card, it's kind of weird to put cycling on a sideboard card because like you want the card, like you brought it in for a reason, right? So I don't know. I think if there's main deck considerations, maybe cycling matters here, but I don't know. Maybe outclassed, but still kind of a cool card. And then limited this card's pretty good too, right? Because like the problem with the card that's limited is that like you draw it on turn 8, but like then you just cycle it. So I think this card is much better than average in your average limited deck, and then constructed fringe player. Holy moly!
Good lord. Gigantism.
The black vanilla legendary creature uncommon is Kalakscion, Hunger Tyrant. 3 mana for a 7/2 crocodile. Crikey! This is a pretty good limited card. 7 is a lot. I've always really liked the 4/2 stat line in limited. I know a lot of folks don't like it, but I've always found the 4/2 stat line on a 3-drop to be pretty good because it blocks really well. It trades up against larger things. And if your opponent just stumbles, the 4/2 hits really, really hard. And if your opponent stumbles against this thing, they're freaking dead. The game's over, right? Like, miss a land drop, take 7. Play a land, play a blocker, kill it, take 7, you're dead. It's over. So I really love the design of these vanilla creatures. It's really fun to see like what you can do with no text on the card. I think it's a fun design challenge. This card's really, really cool. Obviously not playable, constructed. Let me take that back, actually. I think if there was a scenario where, like, there was some sort of combo deck in Standard, maybe even Pioneer, where, like, the deck was a pure Goldfish deck. Like, pure combo, pure Goldfish, and you wanted a card that just hit harder than anything, probably still not. All right, whatever. I'm looking for the corner case, but yeah, whatever. Phyrexian Negator kind of style, where you just like bring him this big idiot and try and kill him fast. I don't know how that situation could possibly be hit, but whatever. I'm just talking, all right? Locust Spray. I think folks who haven't experienced 1 mana cycling effects are going to drastically underappreciate 1 mana cycling cards, all right? There aren't that many in the set. But cycling for 1 mana is so much better than 2 or 3. It is astronomical. It's the difference between Lightning Bolt and Lightning Strike, a legacy playable removal spell and a card's barely playable in Standard. All right, that's how much better 1 is from 2. This card is a card that can kill a Llanowar Elves or a Heartfire Hero on turn 1, or whatever else it might be, and then cycle. If you don't need it, cycle it. Whatever, cool. It's an instant that goes to the graveyard. It fills your graveyard for Delirium. If there's cycling effects that care about discarding cards, whatever else it might be, it does that as well. I think this card's nice. I think this card definitely needs to have a particular home where we need to have a reason to play this card. But I think this card is pretty awesome. And I think this card is a card that can see play in multiple formats. It's just so cheap. Card's great. Don't sleep on it. Good and limited also. The buyout here is just so good. I'm a big fan. So, sorry. Nope. We're done here. Thank you. Wake up, dude. We're done. We're going to the next card. All right. Good stuff. Maximum Overdrive. 2 mana for an instant. Dude, you gotta leave, man. You're just get out of here. All right. Thank you. It's so hard to find good help these days. 2 mana for an instant. Plus encounter on a creature. Death touch indestructible till end of turn. Wish Gate Lifelink also, but this is like your generic okay black limited trick. If you're aggressive, this card's okay. It's not super exciting. Don't take it high. Maybe it makes your deck, but whatever. You know, just is what it is. Oh boy. I came close to giving this card an award. I decided not to. As if Pixie decks needed it anymore, right? 2 mana for an enchantment. Start your engines. Whenever it enters, each opponent sacrifices a creature or vehicle of your choice. If they can't, discard a card. So the problem with these with these removal spells, these kind of like, is that like, well, what if they're not playing creatures? What can you do? This is just Hopeless Nightmare and Nowhere to Run. Not as good exactly, but Tithing Blade was already seeing play in Pixie decks, and this is like just so much better in every possible way. And then also, if you happen to max speed, also if you want to gain some life too, you can sack it for your speed. So it's basically a food as well. This card is, oh boy, this card's a big deal. I was close to giving this card a sleeper award. I was close to giving this card a best in show award because I think this card is going to be very, very impactful in standard. But it's not like anything crazy, like new or different. And it's very, very specific to the Pixie bounce archetypes. But this card is real good. Definitely worse in limited, where Edict Effectors aren't nearly as good. But in constructed, man, watch out for this card, And the thing also is that, like, this card's also good against cards that are good against Pixie, like Thrun. It's just an Edict, too. So, yeah. This card kind of does it all. Scary card. I think folks are going to hate this card in about a month or so. Mutant Surveyor is next. They're for a 2/3. This is the black entry into the Death Cycle card. So we have a Start Your Engines card. It's got 2 mana to pump and has the max speed 3 exile from graveyard draw card. There's one of these in every common color. This one's pretty good. The body is not great when you first cast it, but it does have value later in the game. I think a downside to this card is that it's good in the late game on both sides, and you want a card that's better in the early game to start. Like these, for example, the white one is like a Grizzly Bear with some upside. Like that's going to trade early, which is what you want out of these cards. You want it to be able to trade early. So I've not talked myself out of this card. I think this card is only okay. But I think the being able to drop your graveyard is pretty cool in draft decks. So I think this card's fine, a little clunky, but I don't know. Worse than the others, I think. Pactdoll Terror. 4 mana for a 3/4. Whenever this artifact you control enters, each opponent loses 1 and you gain 1. Scary card, right? Like this is like a combo card where it would not be that hard, to loop an artifact and kill your opponent with this. But it does cost a lot of mana. So it's a 4 mana 3/4. That being said, this seems like a pretty good limited card, right? Like, you play it, and then you keep playing artifacts. Obviously, you can make tokens or whatever, kind of cool. It's a little clunky as a 4 mana 3/4. I think if this card costs 3 or less, it would be a banger. At 4 mana, I don't know. Not sure. I'm honestly pretty, confused with this card. It does help trigger speed and stuff, but 4 mana for a 3/4 is pretty tough. I don't know. I'm not sure. The effect is very, very powerful, but I think it'd be very, very contingent on your deck. And also, it's a Toy Story thing. Yay.
Pointless nostalgia.
Quag Feast. Gotta mill this Bloodghast somehow, right? Quag Feast, best in show for black. I wish this card was an instant, obviously, but it would be insane as an instant. 2 mana for a sorcery. Choose a creature, a planeswalker, or a vehicle. Mill 2. Then destroy the permanent if its mana value is less than or equal to the number of cards in your graveyard. So, face value, first spell of the game, this can kill a 2-drop or less. That's important, right? This card has a great fail state of just kill a 2 mana thing or a 1 mana thing. As the game goes on, this just kills anything, which is awesome. And then milling cards is great too. Delirium, Bloodghast, etc., all really cool stuff. Maybe you're a Reanimator deck, maybe you're an Oculus deck. Graveyard's just a good place to be, and this card's really, really good for that. I think being able to kill Planeswalkers is nice too against Kaido. This card's great. Really, really good. As an instant, This card will be busted, I think. I think it's a good thing Aetherdrift is not an instant, but card's great. Really, really powerful removal spell. Great and limited, great and constructed. Definitely a synergy card. You know, we're not just playing this over the throat, like our random, like, you know, mono black aggro deck or whatever. But really, really cool. Also interesting. Oh yeah, never mind. Yeah, we're good. So yeah, good stuff. Card really, really cool. Yeah, great. Next up is Ripcall Wrangler, which is a 4-mana 4/3 vehicle, EDB Ravenous Rat Crew 2. I'm not very interested in vehicles that are like 4 mana, not very big. You know, discard a card effect is nice, but also Crew 2 is so much more than one. I think his card's just limited filler, not very exciting. Oh shit, Best in Show still up. Sorry. That last card was not Best in Show. No, it wasn't. Promise you. Raisin Necroregent is next. 5 mana for a 5/4 zombie cat knight.
Lousy cat.
Start your engines, max speed, beginning of your end step, make a 2/2 black zombie creature token. This is a good limited card. You know, at this point in the game, you'll hopefully already have max speed if you're aggressive enough, and then you're just gonna poop out 2/2s. You know, play this thing, make a 2/2 as they go. If they kill it, you're already up, which is great. So good top end limited card. Not a card you're taking like super highly, I don't think. You know, ideally you'd have like some sick bomber at 5 mana, but this card is more than reasonable. And good installed out game, pretty good. I think if it was like a 5/5 or a 4/5, I might like it a little bit more actually, as a better blocker, because you want to like prolong the game with this card in play, but still pretty good. Risky Shortcut. It's a fun variation on a theme here. The meta for a sorcery, draw 2. Each player loses 2 life rather than just yourself. So it's the Sign in Blood kind of effect, but they also lose 2. So a little extra boost here when it comes to aggro decks. It's a way to increase speed, which is kind of cool also. Typically, I'm not a big fan of these Read the Bones kind of effects in Limited. Limited is very fast these days, so it's all about getting on the board. So tapping 3 mana to not affect the board and lose life is a real tough sell sometimes, but your opponent losing life, speed, and a few other factors are kind of cool here. I think the relative speed of the format will dictate how good this card is, but it's pretty cool, honestly. It's a cool variation on this with a little extra subtext as well, which is nice. Constructed, probably not, but Shefet Archfiend. It's kind of cool art. 7 mana for a 5/5 flying demon. When it enters, all other creatures get -2/-2. Has cycling 2. Kind of cool, right? Because the cycling means you can put it in the graveyard to reanimate. Not a lot of reanimate stuff in this set in particular, but like in Constructed, like this could be a Massacre Worm type card that's just like really easy to get in the bin. Just cycle it and then turn 4, zombify it, you know, which is kind of cool. I guess that being said, in Constructed, you just have the Harvester of Misery. So forget everything I just said. I'm just very, 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 very wrong.
So you get nothing.
But cool limited card. 7 is a lot of mana, but cycling buyout's kind of cool. It's expensive. I can't really sugarcoat it, you know. But yeah, could be cool at living end though in modern. But yeah, spin out. There's nothing really to say here, folks. Bombin Common. It's a murder. You can kill vehicles also. The amount of times you're gonna need to kill a vehicle that's not a creature are probably few and far between. But murder's great, and I think that murder in this set is gonna be pretty good. This feels like a go tall set, not a go wide set. You know, murder was very bad in Murder's a Karlov Manor because like it was just all about going wide with random 2/2s and crap. Whereas this set looks like you're playing bigger vehicles and so on and so forth. So I think murder this is going to be a good murder set. Not much more to say. Bombin Common for black. Don't play it constructed. Streaking Oilgorger. Streaking, huh? Please don't. 5 mana for a 3/3 flying haste. Start your engines. It has lifelink. I think if your draft deck is capable of getting max speed pretty reliably, this is a really good curve topper. You'd rather have a rare or an uncommon, but this is perfectly serviceable. Not a high pick because like most decks won't want this, but I think that, like if you're playing this card, you know, in your red black speed aggro deck or whatever as a curve topper, you could do a lot worse. But yeah, you'll get it for free in a draft, but pretty cool card. Siphon Fuel, 5 mana, instant, -6/-6, gain 2. Your typical bad limited removal spell. If you're desperate for kill spells, you can play it. Otherwise, not very exciting. The Last Ride.
It's a trap.
Death's Shadow, Death's Shadow. Death's Shadow is a card that obviously has done a lot in Constructed over the years, in Modern and stuff and Legacy. It is also a card that languished in unplayability for a decade before seeing any play because it's just not a very good card unless there's a very, very specific set of circumstances. A lot predicated around Thoughtseize and Fetchland Shocklands. Those aren't in Standard. So not necessarily so great. And then we have 1 black, for an artifact, pay 3, lose 2, draw, like this bad greed effect. That all seems really bad to me. It's also legendary. And then on top of all of that, it's not even a creature, Typically, Death Shadow decks used to play like 8 creatures, because it was all about playing one big thing instead of protecting it. This thing needs a freaking crew. It's not even a creature without a crew, So I think this card is quite bad. Maybe if you're like an aggro deck that like wants to have a non-sunfallable threat that can draw some card, I don't even know. But this card just seems really, really bad to me. In limited, maybe okay, because like the draw card effect is fine. The game will get to that point, but I think this card is a real stinker. In any format where you could play Death Shadow, you just play Death Shadow instead. And then if Shadow's not legal, you don't want to play this card. The one upside here is you can play it on turn 1, but that's just not good. Speed Demon! Speed Demon! Anyone? MJ? 5 mana for a 5/5 flying triple demons. Legend. Start your engines. Most engine cards only care about max speed. There are a few that care about your speed number. This is one of them. So end step, draw X and lose X where X is your speed. So there'll always be 1 at least. I think the problem with this card is it's actually pretty good, but it's just worse than the other demon card draw cards that are already available in Unholy Annex. And those cards are also pretty unplayable in a format where Nowhere to Run is one of the, where This Town Ain't Big Enough is one of the best cards. Unholy Annex has completely dropped off the map in Standard, and this card does not change that at all. So powerful limited card. It is a fairly powerful card, but I think that 5 mana, it just kind of dies. Not super exciting. So, yeah, I don't know. Speed Demon, cool limited card, but it also runs the risk of just killing you, right? Where, like, you just have speed 4, you should freaking die. So, Wicker Folk Indomitable. 4 mana for a 4/3 Scarecrow. You may cast a card from your graveyard by paying 2 life and sacrificing an artifact or creature, in addition to paying its other costs. So, for constructive, this card's too clunky. For limited, this card's pretty nice, honestly. You just turn random junk and play into a 4/3 over and over again. The body's fine by itself. Really good with self-mill, obviously. Put cards in the graveyard and you just, you're ready to go, which is kind of nice. So, cool limited card. Not, like, overtly powerful and requires a little extra help, but it's cool. Fun build-around-y card. Fun synergy stuff. Fun limited card. I'm a fan. Wreckage Wicker Folk. Man, talk about cards that would have been awesome in Duskborn, right? We got 2 mana for a 1/3 flying ETB Surveil 2. So great Delirium Enabler. There's no Delirium in the set, obviously, but obviously good with cards like we just saw. There is a graveyard theme in this set, with some self-mill and stuff like that too. The body's not great. 1/3 flyer for 2 is not particularly exciting. It's not really a great crew either. I think if this card was like a pilot and had the pilot crew text, it would be quite good. But I think this card's mostly mediocre unless you're really, really in on the graveyard. That being said, really cool art, right? Love the colors on that art. Wretched Doll. 2 mana for it, 3/1. It's just a artifact creature toy. Black tap, Surveil 1. Just an okay limited card. Body's fine, blocks okay, attacks okay, Surveil's fine in a longer game. Just almost like common power level, not that exciting, but it's fun. And that's it for black. So we see Quag Feast is our best in show in black. Locust Spray is our sleeper card. The Last Ride is our trap card. And Spin Out is our Bombin Common. Right as next. You two folks, love you, like, comment, subscribe. Don't go nowhere. Please support the content. Right? That means you. All right? And don't forget 10 new brews coming up on Wednesday, as well as Bronze Mythic on Tuesday of the following week.